Alright everyone, it's time for Sticks, Hex, and Hammer's thoughts on the Pitbull debate. Are Pitbulls good? Are they bad? Are they naturally aggressive? Is it just the owner? Should they be banned? Should they be regulated? Should they be, free to everyone? Should everyone have a couple of pitties? Here's my overall thoughts. I do not believe in outlawing Pitbulls, just to be clear. But I have some various side thoughts that I would like to talk about. Number one, Pitbulls, unlike guns, guns are made to potentially kill. They can also be used for sport shooting, for plinking, self-defense, so you're doing something violent with it, but, the other person potentially deserves it because they're trying to kill you or rob you or something. They can be collected, etc., etc. Pitbulls were bred for a significant period of time, if we're talking about the modern breed of the Pitbull, specifically to be more aggressive and have greater physical prowess than most species of dogs. Now, they're not the only ones, just to be clear. Rottweilers, Dobermans, etc. There are many dogs that are trained for guard purposes, that are trained for hunting. Some of the hunting dogs are more like retrieving what you've killed already or something like that, like a duck hunting buddy. And you get sheep dogs, and you've got rat hunting dogs, and all of these different things. There is one thing I will say with regards to Pitbulls and certain similar breeds like the Rottweiler that are more likely to aggress towards people, which is that there is a sampling bias with regards to the actual deaths related to dogs or maulings related to dogs. If you get attacked by a Chihuahua, no matter how aggressive it's trying to be, the Chihuahua ultimately, you're probably not going to report vicious dog problem because of the toy Chihuahua nibbling at your ankle. It's trying to really go for you. I mean, if it could, it would rip out your throat, but it's just too small. You can pick it up and say that's enough and toss it in the trash bin if you have to. A Pitbull or a Rottweiler, those breeds are larger. If a Pitbull attacks, it's more likely to do the kind of injury where you're definitely reporting it to the police. You're going to the hospital. Again, the toy poodle, the Morkie or something like that probably is not going to be able to do that kind of damage, and you'll be laughed at if you make a report, which, by the way, should not be the case. The fact that a person was slightly injured by a small dog does not discount it as being a potential danger. What if the dog got after a toddler? Then it could do some damage. Of course, there is that differential. It's sort of like the debate between your evil baby-killing AR-15 with the 1,000-round magazine clip and the fully automatic explosive firing rate and all that hyperbole, and a little Glock 42. Well, the Glock 42 is much more innocuous. It's much smaller. It's much more unlikely to be used in the sort of setting where you'd get a mass killing. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it is more likely to be used in a specific violent attack. Just to be clear, small caliber handguns are the choice. 22s, 9mm, something like that. That's the choice of most of the criminals because they're easily concealable. Again, you do have this sort of similarity. Here's what I suggest. And it overlaps with the gun debate, although guns are constitutionally guaranteed, Pitbulls happen not to be. That's another thing I will put out there. Here's what should happen. If you're in possession of a pit bull, or any dog for that matter, you should be considered responsible for its actions. No more of, and the excuse making, by the way, by some pit bull owners is goddamn ludicrous. Well, they were wearing the wrong makeup. They got a little bit too close to Fluffy's face, and Fluffy didn't like it, so it's basically their fault. There are cases where people are blamed for being mauled to death by pit bulls. This is something that tends to be specific to pit bull owners, I've noticed. I do not see that kind of excuse making when someone's Labrador pops off. I just don't see it. In full admission, find me a goddamn example where a sheepdog mauled somebody and ripped half their face off, and then they blame the person who got mauled. Not necessarily a great legal defense either. They're wearing the wrong perfume. They touched Fluffy's tail or something like that. That's just bullshit. It's ludicrous, and these people know it. If you are in possession of the animal, you should be held responsible for the actions of the animal. It's supposed to be under your control. It's the same as with a gun. If I'm holding a gun and I'm fiddling around with it and it accidentally goes off, regardless of the situation, it accidentally hurts someone, then unless I'm Alex Baldwin, I guess normally you get prosecuted for that or at least civilly held liable. If you designate that dog to another person, you should still be responsible for its actions. Unless it's like a licensed dog walker or something, okay, that's an individual, they're in control of the dog at that time. Let's say that I send Fluffy out for the walk with a 10-year-old, which is a goddamn stupid idea. 10-year-old can't restrain Fluffy, Fluffy hauls off and goes and gorges itself on infants at the orphanage. I should be held responsible. The 10-year-old should never have been given charge of the dog. The same should be true for guns. If you think your child is competent, you say, look, we're going to do some training, here's the .22, we're going to plink a little bit. And you know they're trustworthy, they know trigger discipline and stuff, you just target shooting, okay, that's fine. But if you give it to the developmentally disabled 9-year-old who is known to be a hellion and might start waving it around and doing stupid shit, and then they accidentally shoot you or themselves or someone else, you should be held liable for that. Notably absent would be any liability if the gun or the dog is stolen, taken against your will. Then you should have no responsibility at all. There are some states, by the way, that try to make it a crime if your gun gets stolen. and then anything happens with it, even if you report the fact that it was stolen. Hey, it's unrecoverable. It was taken out of it. They broke into my safe itself and they still took it. Sorry, but if anyone ever robs anyone at gunpoint with that gun and it gets recovered, you can actually be held liable in some U.S. states. It's unconstitutional and silly, but yeah. Same would be true of a dog. If somebody who's not authorized, you haven't given your son permission to walk Fluffy, but he takes Fluffy out anyway because Fluffy keeps dragging its ass across the carpet, that shouldn't be held against the dog owner. As far as Pitbull ownership, would I own one? No. I would never own any large breed of dog anyway because I'm just not into it. It has nothing to do with specific animus against Pitbulls. I would notice that if you're not going to say, though, that the number of violent attacks by Pitbulls is due, at least in part, to the breed, then you have to explain the commonality behind Pitbull owners. And that becomes a little bit of a problem for Pitbull owners. What commonality is so much more common among Pitbulls than literally all other breeds combined? Which is the truth, or nearly so. I think between Pitbulls and Rottweilers alone, it's the vast majority of all maulings. What commonality is it to these particular breeds that causes their owners to be more likely to be unable to handle the animal, more likely to not raise the animal properly, more likely not to train the animal properly? Now the answer is obvious. A lot of Pitbull owners see it as sort of a ghetto status symbol and they pop it in the front yard and then wonder why it rips the mailman's hand off or something like that. They have them there as a guard dog. They're also used in dog fighting a lot, so you get one of those dogs, it's literally being harassed into attacking other animals and ripping them apart. Yeah, no shit, that could cause some aggression issues. But even when they are properly trained, the owner also has to be able to maintain that training. And it's sort of like, we'll turn back to guns again. It's a lot easier to maintain a revolver than it is I'll use spooky terms that the liberals would understand, the high-capacity assault weapon. This is the M666 machine gun, fully belt-fed and explosive rounds, and it's got 25 valves on it that help you with targeting and stuff. Okay, your tactical weapon takes a little bit more maintenance and training to use properly. Otherwise, you may hurt yourself. You may hurt someone else inadvertently. Or you may just go off and shoot up a school or something like that. Most of the time that won't be done with a .22 revolver or something like that. That doesn't mean that you ban it. It just means that you hope that the people that are obtaining them have the proper training to use them. The same is true of Pitbulls. My hope is that Pitbull owners will do better because quite clearly you're causing your own problems at some point. You've got this large number of people owning a specific breed of dog, and they seem an order of magnitude more likely than their next competitor, the Rottweiler, to have a situation where the dog pops off. Part of it is that people who really, they're not physically strong enough to restrain that dog and don't have the training to be able to recall it properly, are trying to walk Fluffy through the dog park and Fluffy is walking them. This can also happen with other large breeds. Notice, though, that you don't hear much about Great Danes attacking and ripping people's faces off or munching at other dogs at the park. Great Dane's way bigger than a Pitbull. It's like a fucking small horse. And yet I can't recall the last time that was a problem. No, it's Pitbulls, Rottweilers, and Mastiffs. Those are the big three, and certain other breeds. Dalmatians can get aggressive too, actually. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of Dalmatians, after 101 Dalmatians was released, they got bought up like candy for people's kids. And then they realized the Dalmatian doesn't stay a little puppy forever and needs to be constantly walked because they're highly athletic, and they all ended up in the dog orphanage, which is really sad. Anyway, just my thoughts on the Pitbull debate. I wouldn't leave my child near any large breed of dog, but especially breeds like a Pitbull or a Rottweiler. I don't care if your Fluffy would never harm a fly, and here's a picture of it with a crown of flowers on its head. I don't give a fucking shit about that. I just would not trust that situation. That being said, I don't believe they should be banned. I do believe that the owners of these animals need to shut the fuck up when they hear about a mauling and they say, well, there's nothing wrong with my little Fluffy. My dog could never do that. Look, they're lying in the sun farting and they're so cute. I hope that you have control over Fluffy when you go out to the dog park, because it can happen to you, as we've seen many times, because every other time that this sort of thing happens with a mauling, with a Pitbull or a similar breed, oh, they would never hurt if I don't understand what happened. It must have been their fault. They wore red. They moved the wrong way. They breathed too heavily. They got nervous and they started moving away, and Fluffy thought it was a game and he can get a little rough and tumble, and then, they lashed out at my dog. They punched it in the face because they thought it was attacking him, and then, it acted defensively. That's horseshit. It's fucking bullshit. That's about all. Peace out.